So we're going to look at G1 again. Today we're going to really focus on the word problems that come along with this, and we're going to have to do some inverse operations to solve these. And let's look at a few so we can get an idea of what we're doing today. It says Jennifer has a picture in the shape of a rectangle. So that right there is a big deal, rectangle. So automatically when I see the word rectangle, I'm going to write A equals length times width, or we could use base times height. And then it says the area. Now notice this right here. It says the area of the picture is 35 inches squared. So that means in the place of the A, we're going to put 35. The area is, now remember that's your preposition, so we can kind of take that out. Just add it extra. The area is 35. Okay? So we put that in the place of A. The length is 7. So in the place of L, we're going to put 7, and there's our W. Now, notice that we have a variable on the right-hand side with our coefficient, which is 7, and then we have 35 over here. We want to isolate that variable. So to isolate the variable, we're going to do inverse operations. So instead of multiplying by 7, we're going to divide both sides by 7. And that's going to cancel out and make 1, because 7 divided by 7 is 1. So we're going to have W equals 5 inches. Now notice this one says 5 inches and not 5 inches squared, because we're talking about one dimension. If you are getting 35 inches squared, you're talking about a dimension times another dimension, or inches times inches. That's where inches squared comes from. But since it's only one dimension, one side here, it's just going to be inches. All right, so let's take a look at a little bit of a harder one, which is triangles. Now, with triangles, we are going to write the formula again, but it can be done just a lot of different ways, but a little different. All right, so it says Cindy made a triangular shaped sculpture, with an area of 63 inches squared. The height is 9 inches. What is the base? All right, so let me pull it. There we go. All right, so write your formula first. Now we notice it's a triangular shaped sculpture, so we're going to put 1/2 base times height. Now again, you could do base times height divided by 2, and that's fine. All right, so it says right here the sculpture has an area of 63 inches squared. So in the place of A, we're going to put 63. Then it says the height is 9 inches. So times 9, so B times 9. Now, a few things we can do here. I've had kids sometimes that like to just go ahead and get rid of that fraction. And that's okay, because decimals are numbers too. You don't have to panic over a decimal. So I could go ahead and say 1/2 of 9. So 63 would equal B times 4.5, because that's taking 1/2 of 9. That's completely okay. If you want to get rid of that, that's fine. But then we would still have to divide both sides by 4.5. So there's maybe a little bit more confusion there, but again, if it works for you, that's fine. So now let's look at one. I think I erased the wrong thing here. But now we're going to look at one that may help just a little bit. Now, it may confuse some, but again, if you don't like this way, that is completely fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 9. Because what that's going to do is say 9 divided by 9 is going to take that away, which means we're going to have 7 equals 1/2 times base. Okay? So now, again, remember, if you're multiplying by a fraction, you're dividing by 2. So this would be the exact same idea of saying 7 equals B divided by 2. So the inverse of dividing by 2 would be to multiply by 2. So times 2 on both sides. 1/2 times 2 is 1, because you're saying 1/2 and another 1/2. That's going to be 1 whole. So those cancel out. So B equals 14 inches. Notice it's just one dimension, so it's just 14 inches. So now we could go back and check this just to make sure and say 14 times 9 divided by 2, and that's fine. Think about this. What's 1/2 of 14? 7, right? So 7 times 9 is going to give us that 63. So I know that that one dimension is 14 and the other is 9. The main thing that students always mess up on here is the fact that they find all of this, but they don't use the 1/2. So, but if you go back and you look at it, 14 times 9 is not going to give you 63. Okay, it's going to give you 106. So I'm sorry, 126. So make sure that you're paying attention to that 1/2. That 1/2 is a big deal, but it also is a big misconception to a lot of students because they just don't want to use the 1/2. So use your formulas, then do inverse operations.